All right. Well, I went to the store and now I'm back and we're ready to start with the second video in this series. This may be the last one. I don't know. We'll just see how far we get. But again, I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and this is a little video series it's a discussion on the Kybalion. We went up through chapter 7 in the first video. We talked about, and in fact, why don't I just go over the 7 principles, not without really talking about them too much, but just to remind you of what we're talking about here. The Kybalion is about 7 Hermetic principles that basically govern all of life and all of existence. It starts with the principle of mentalism, where the all is mind, the universe is mind. Next, the principle of correspondence, as above, so below. As below, so above, and I think I flubbed that one in the first video, but anyway, forgive me on that. Usually I just say as above, so below, but anyway. Principle of vibration is the third. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates, everything's in motion. Principle of polarity is number 4. Everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same, etc. 5 is the principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall, etc. 6, principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause, and everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized, and there are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law, end quote. And lastly, 7, principle of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. So we went and we discussed a little bit last time about in chapters 3 through 7, mental transmutation, the all, the mental universe, the divine paradox, and the all in the all. There's actually 15 chapters in all in this little text. And some of them have a lot of examples and whatnot, but the essence is really, just limited. So I just went ahead and I did the whole thing there. So we ended with chapter 7, the all in the all. And now today, or I should say in this video, we're going to look at the planes of correspondence. And correspondences for witches are a big deal. We like to, when we work magic, we like to align energies. And so, for example, you might include this particular pyramid to represent the fire element. Another fun thing to use to represent the fire element. I've got a skirt on here and it's getting caught. Wonder where that went. Well, I don't know where my pentagram is. Anyway, it has this really cool red jasper egg in it. It's just adorable. Anyway, I was going to show you that for fire. Oh, here's a nice cube for fire. Let's see, this one could be used for either the crown chakra or for ether or spirit, maybe. You could also use a clear quartz for that. The malachite could be used for the heart chakra or for love magic or something. This could represent communication, this nice sodalite pyramid. The apopalite can also represent spirit. That's also a really nice one. But you can see where everything corresponds. You might use, here's some raven's feathers, actually from ravens that live on my property or hang out on my property in my trees. These are actually raven's feathers. And you could use that for the air element, for example. Anything black could be used for the earth element. Anything brown could be. But you kind of get the idea. Correspondences are they're not just about stones and things like that. They're about all kinds of things, So when we start thinking about working magic, say around communication or something, then we're going to focus on the air element, likely. Maybe a little bit on the water element, because maybe you want to bring some heart-centered issues into the whole thing, right? So I think that for at least for witchcraft, when we get into the whole notion of the planes of correspondences, that's when we all tend to perk up. It's like, okay, what can we learn about that to enhance our magic? So in any event, let's go on where we were, and we'll pick up where we left off And I'm just, so I don't have this, I only have some notes. I'm not like reading a speech or anything. So most of this, like, with the somewhat daily tarot and rune videos I do, it's just all off the cuff. So I don't know. It's going to be what it's going to be. And hopefully I won't mess up too much. So anyhow, so we know about the planes of correspondence because all things emanate from the all, and there's harmony between various planes of manifestation. Now, this is divided arbitrarily, so it's more illusory than anything else because one tends to blend into the next. We've got 3 arbitrary greater planes or states or conditions. But again, the division of that between the 3 are only by degree and with each rolling into the other, basically. So we have physical, which is the undifferentiated matter. We have the mental plane, and we have the spiritual plane. And we're talking degrees of that, of course, ending, of course, with the highest point of spirit. Planes are described in terms of vibration. The higher the vibration, the higher the plane. So just so you know, when we're transmuting one thing from one lower state to something higher, we're transmitting negativity into positivity, then we're doing so from that section of the vibration, the higher level vibration, and we're transmuting it to go there. We're not going down into the negativity and then moving it upward. We're actually asking it to rise to where we are. And that's the transmutation process. So, irrespective of what it is, it's all a matter of degree or scale. And one thing that I noticed, and I've seen this before, and we talk about, when we talk about elementals in magic, like the little sylphs and the gnomes and all the little elementals that we supposedly no longer see. We feel them. We feel their effects. In the past, though, the energies were such that we could actually see these beings, and unfortunately, we've become so knotted up that we don't see that energetically, that we don't see those things necessarily anymore. So some people do, but not everyone does. It's not as normal as what it used to be. But in any event, we want to see these energies that we're talking about. We could actually see them as energetic beings. And it might give a little bit different perspective with all of it. But anyway, the three great planes divide into 7, 3 of matter, 1 of ethereal substance, and 3 of energy. Again, referencing the septenate nature of the universe. Matter, the plane of matter, it has 7 energies associated with it, or 7 planes associated with it. We have the first is matter, dealing with solids, liquids, and gases. The second is the same, only higher and more subtle forms of it, what they call radiant matter. And the third level, we're talking about even more subtle levels of matter. But we come to the 4th position, and again, remember this, because if you think about it from this way, you're balancing matter with spirit, okay? Form with spirit, with the 4th position being the resting place of the scale. Well, in the 4th position, in terms of matter here, we're talking about the ethereal substance plane. And what that does, and here is where you get the blending effect, because it's connecting matter to energy, but it's not an abrupt connection. You're blending it and smoothing it and connecting it to one another, basically, through the ethereal substance, or the 4th plane there of matter. We call that ether. It's elastic in nature. It pervades all space, but make no mistake about it. It is the area. If you want to think of it as the 4th dimension, you could think of it that way, the vibratory dimension, but it's the dimension between the physical matter and spirit. 5, 6, and 7, we're dealing with energy levels now. The 5th one is your heat, light, magnetism, electricity, attraction of the physical realm, basically. But 6 involves more mental phenomenon. And so you're not dealing with, things that we can feel and experience necessarily. At least tangibly. We feel the heat. We feel, or we see the light, right? We feel electricity. We experience these things. We experience attraction. When you get into the sixth level of this, you're talking about something that's a little bit more on the mental plane. And then when we move to the seventh plane, that's the plane of the gods or divine power. Now, moving on to the great mental plane, we're looking again at 7 planes of existence. And we're looking at the plane of the mineral mind, but this is mental, all right? So mineral mind. The second is the elemental mind, the first of 3, all right? Again, acting as a transitional phase, like the ethereal substance does, acting as a transitional phase between the plane below and the plane above. And so the first is the plane of the mineral mind. The second is the plane of the elemental mind, the first one. Then we move to the plane of the plant mind, which is the states and conditions of those in the plant world. And then we have another plane of the elemental mind after that, which governs the area between the plant mind and the animal mind. And then the next plane of the mental plane is the plant of the animal mind, which governs obviously the states and conditions of the animal mind. And then another elemental mind plane that allows for the transition and awareness between the two, between the animal mind then and the human mind. Our own race, which is the 5th root race that we're in, and race does not, I'm not talking Caucasian, Asian. I'm not talking about that when we talk about race. Root races are the collective, all right? You talk about the 12 tribes of Israel. We're talking root races here, all right? And it's not necessarily about, and see, because who we all are now is a blending of all that. So the concept of, I am a white person, or someone is an African American person, or an African person, whatever, African American in this country, obviously, or someone who's Hispanic, or someone who is Asian, or whatever. Okay, that's nice, that's swell, that brings richness to the creation, but inside we're all the same. We might look a little different, but that doesn't matter. It's only differences, again, by degree, if you'll recall. Always. In the mind of the Creator, all things are different only by degree. We exist on the 4th plane of this, or rather the 5th plane of this. Or no, actually, we're on the 4th level. They didn't discuss who moves on to the 5th, but the 6th level we think of as a superman. And then on the 7th plane, we think of as overman. So you can see where we're still progressing in terms of our own humanity within this same structure. The elemental planes, as I said, connect all others together, because they really do, and they do that, again, by blending the energies from both below and above them together. And it just allows for a smooth transition in terms of how we navigate form. Now, the great spiritual plane transcends our state of being. Basically, you're talking beings that are clothed in pure energy. The 7 archangels, angels, demigods reside on the 7 minor planes. These are all, they're considered elder brethren, because they're still considered mortal, because even though they don't seem like it, they seem immortal, but they're really not, because they've not folded yet back into the all. Although we might think of them that way, as being immortal. Once you get into, Ashiana Dean talks about the different harmonic universes, and we're talking about 15 dimensions with 3, planes of existence in each one, right? So we're currently in the first harmonic universe, and we will then transition into the second at some point in this ascension process. But we've got more than one, basically, of those type of harmonic universes. And so as we go through all of this, then I don't know if there are more after that, or if it's at that point that we fold back into the Creator. But all of this still exists below the absolute spirit level. So we're talking about masters and adepts, angelic hosts, the so-called gods that aren't. They're just higher level, higher density, beings, higher dimensional beings, basically, or interdimensional beings, if you want to call them that. All of these people, though, all of these entities, energetic entities, we can call them, assist us in influencing our development. Occasionally, they intervene. We know that happened with the Ra group when they came here. They did it several times. If you go back and you look at the Law of One, you can see they will tell you in this channeling when they were here and where they were and what they did. They basically got ahead of themselves, though, thinking that we might be able to understand what they were saying. But in fact, they ended up having to leave us because they just messed things up a little bit too much. They gave us too much, and we weren't capable of understanding it, I guess. And so they left us and stopped interfering, basically. My hair is doing weird things today. But all of this exists within the all and are governed by cosmic laws that govern humanity in the grossest of material form. Even the gods do, the so-called gods. And I'm not talking about the all. I'm talking about the higher level beings that were here, the angelic people that were here, that we consider angels, who likely aren't. I mean, I suppose we can call them that because they are here for our benefit, right? They also, in the Kybalion, define spirit as the animating essence or principle with power, living energy, mystic force, and all. Spiritual power can both be positive and negative, though. So again, we're bringing into the notion of the principle of polarity here, aren't we? The negative referencing, say, Satan or Lucifer or the fallen angels. And this is what I found to be so fascinating here. Because it's to me, it is probably, well, it may be the most accurate understanding of what all this was. But when you talk about the principle of polarity, it also involves, as we spoke in the last video, about the principle of rhythm, right? And so as the pendulum swings back from whatever choice they've made, it eventually, wherever it goes, it's now retracing its steps spiritward again, which I thought was an interesting spirit word, spiritward. So in other words, towards spirit. In other words, if we have polarized negatively, I mean, think about this for a moment. If we've polarized negatively, now we've made that choice, right? So we have to swing all the way back and begin our ascent forward again. It's interesting when you think about reincarnation, could that be some of what we're doing? Or are we simply, as some have suggested, in a loop right now of not our own making? But could we do that? What they're saying here is that power, the power to choose service to self or service to others, to polarize positively, to polarize negatively, whatever power we have that makes that choice. If it's selfish in nature, it loses balance and basically falls back to its beginning, suggesting the metaphor of the fall of man. But did that happen because of choices we made, or because boundaries were put upon us that were not part of our own design? And some are suggesting that that's actually what's happening. And so with ascension, as when we start to learn to work within these laws, learning how to transmute them, the lower energies into the higher frequencies, there's your ascension process, isn't it? You are then awakened enough that you can ascend on instead of returning to do it all over again. Maybe. According to the principle of correspondence, as above, so below functions on all levels. So the principle of mental substance applies to all planes because we're all held within the mind of the all. And I think it's the 7 stanzas of Daisen, or however you pronounce that, Daisen. We're going to go over that one as well. I love that one because once you come past the principle of the masculine principle, focusing it's a will to the feminine principle, and then the feminine principle takes over, that we call the Great Mother. And the universe and creation is simply resting in the Great Mother's breath, which I love. I mean, the visual of that is just amazing, isn't it? And then when the Great Mother is finished, she inhales us back as she sleeps, and then they do it all over again. Maybe. The principle of, okay, we already talked about the principle of mental substance applies to all planes because we're all held within the mind of the all and in the Great Mother's breath, and we rest in the Great Mother's breath, right? Again, in that fourth position of observation, if we get too much interacting, right, too much engagement, the ego pops in and, not such a good thing. And then we're transmuting, right, that stuff into the higher stuff if we know how to do that, right? So, correspondence manifests in all, resulting in harmony between planes. Vibration manifests because everything and everyone is in motion. Polarity manifests in terms of opposites. Rhythm manifests in terms of ebb and flow, incoming, outgoing flow. Cause and effect manifests because there isn't one without the other. And gender manifests as its masculine and feminine aspects. And that's why I say when we get to the whole principle of correspondence, everything else, the principle of polarity, really, everything else flows from that, doesn't it? Including the correspondence. In chapter 9, they talk about vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. The only difference between everything is the rate and mode in which it vibrates, really. That's an interesting thing to think about, too. But again, think of it, probably the easiest way to think about it is in terms of temperature. Temperature, view as a circle. You've got hot and cold, all right? They're only there by virtue of degree, are they not? We even call them degrees of temperature, right? 32 degrees out. It could be 70 degrees out, but it's not, it's 32. So it's colder instead of being warmer, but it's just a matter of degree. It could be that you could have a heat wave come in the afternoon and it could be 70, kind of like what's happening around here right now. It got up to 68 here yesterday, and I think it was maybe, I don't know, the lows were in the 30s maybe, or something, high 30s maybe, I don't know. But you can see the temperature swing. It's a matter of degree, right? Spirit is, I should say, the more rapid the vibration, the more it appears at rest. Is that not true? Watch a wheel. As it gets going so fast, pretty soon it looks like it's sitting still, right? Spirit is at one pole and focused matter is on the other. And the vibrations that arise, such as from temperature or heat or what have you, doesn't matter what it is, they're circular in nature. You look at the planetary revolution around the sun, everything is in a spiral or in a circle. Actually, spiral. Light, heat, magnetism, and electricity are vibrations emanating from the ether. Ethereal substance that we learned about in Chapter 8 provides the connection between matter and energy/force, and its vibrational rate is its own. So the ethereal substance, as I see it, that elastic, tenuous type of substance that's out there, pervades everything, connecting spirit with matter, is likely the God force in action. It's almost like, rather than standing back and observing all of this as it unfolds, and I have no idea if that's what's happening. But if that's what's happening, it's almost like with the ethereal substance aspect of it, suddenly creators in there going, okay, let's make sure this all just sort of blends together so that people can do what they do here, experiencing life. But at some point, the vibratory rate increases to the level where it can no longer be perceived by the human mind. Sound, again, is an example of that, where it's so high-pitched we can't hear it. Like a dog whistle comes to mind with that. Color follows the same trend, with red moving into orange, orange into yellow, into green, into blue, into indigo, into violet. And when that vibrational rate increases enough, no color is perceived without other measures being employed. So there it would be like looking at radiant energy that you can't see without some kind of a filter or something. But again, when we talked about, oh, and where was that? Well, it was in chapter 8 somewhere. Let's go back to that. Remember on the great mental plane where we talked about there were 3 planes of elemental mind separating out the mineral, plant, animal, and human minds. And the notion there, you see that same kind of blending there where one set of energies is through the elemental mind is blending then into the plant mind, and then through the next energies blending into the animal mind, and then from the next energies into the human mind. So you can see that same sort of process goes on. Now let's see if I can find out where we are. Okay. Thoughts, emotions, or mental states all have their rate or mode of vibration, okay, that's corresponding to themselves. Again, we're talking correspondences here. And may be influenced by intention via mental transmutation to achieve any vibratory rate desired. And here we come to magic, okay? And anyone can do this. You don't have to be a witch or magician. You are part of source energy. You have the ability. I'll say it again. Thoughts, emotions, or mental states all have their rate or mode of vibration and may be influenced by intention via mental transmutation to achieve any vibratory rate desired. So what that means is, if you're upset, you want to put your focus on something positive. Immediately, you get upset, change your focus. If you have to move away from the situation, do it. Focus on something positive, and you'll watch your emotional state change and begin to vibrate higher just by virtue of focusing on something positive. That's all it takes. Since vibrations of others are also felt, it's possible to affect others with our moods, emotions, and thoughts, a process known as induction. Now, energy vampires do this, whether they want to or not. People that I talked about this in a book called When Vampires Attack. It was my second book on being an empath. First one's just called Empath. And the point is, I guess, that no matter what, we're going to feel someone else's mood. You walk into a room, you know someone's angry or upset, you feel it, don't you? That's called induction. Now, if you decide to do that intentionally, you have an energy vampire, okay? You have somebody, usually someone who's sociopathic or psychopathic or whatever, who wants to go and try to affect someone else. They start focusing in on them, and believe me, you will feel it. I do anyway, as an empath. Now, all of us are empathic, and I will just stop for a moment and share this with you. We like to see, it's like, oh, are you intuitive or are you empathic? No, that's the wrong question. If there is a resonance within the mind of the all, it's one of emotion and love. And so that is the state that we are born in, because that's the state in which we reside in non-physical. So when we come into form, that's when intuition and all the clear abilities take over. They sort of get, the empathic awareness gets redefined downward, essentially, into a more gross material form of that, to where then you can then start, feeling into people. But that's what you're doing. You're feeling in to get the intuitive awareness that you need. But make no mistake about it, each one of us is empathic. That is our natural state. Our natural state of spirit is empathic. It's how we interact. We don't need the other skills in spirit, do we? No, we just resonate with one another there. And we know what we know, right? Because we're one. Why wouldn't we? When we know what we know, that's the area that we're accessing anyway. That's the awareness we're accessing. So whether it's something that you do all the time or you have occasional moments of deja vu, that's what's really going on. You're accessing that. Those people skilled enough to mentally transmute might also be thought to cause miracles. So think about that. We manifest our reality. Those of us skilled enough to really do that via transmutation means we can create whatever we want. You know, loaves and fishes and all that stuff, parting Red Seas and all of that. Mm-hmm. Chapter 10 talks about polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. End quote. What they're saying here, all things have two sides, two aspects, opposites, poles with degrees between. No absolute standard. So when we are sure about something, when we assume something, when we think something's right, wrong, or indifferent, is it? Or is it just a matter of degree? You see, all of this takes away judgment, doesn't it? All of it does. All things can be reconciled by the principle of polarity if you know how to work within it. Capital laws, capital L laws, and small and lowercase l laws. Laws of spirit, you can transmute the laws of mankind into spirit, right? Principles in capital letters versus principles in small letters. Infinite mind versus the finite mind. Heat, cold, light, dark, north, south, east, west, spirit, form. It's all true on all planes. Nothing is nothing is, as much as it seems so, nothing is diametrically opposed. It's only a matter of degree within the whole of that particular concept in which it lies. Again, temperature, heat and cold, a matter of degree. Just keep thinking that. You'll see the relationship. Transmutation takes place within the seeming opposites between heat and cold, but say not between heat and dark. So whatever your little opposites occur in, it's not going to go over into someone else's opposites and affect that. It's going to stay within that polarity structure that it lives within. Which is probably an obvious thing to say, but they did put it in there, so I'm just going to share it with you. Transmutation of the mental state involves raising the vibration to a higher frequency. That's really all it does. It's to get out of the negative mind, the negative self-talk, the negative mindset, and see yourself instead of through the eyes of ego. Instead, you see yourself through the eyes of source vision. And there's another thing, which I thought, look, the whole thing is fascinating, but there's just some stuff that kind of gives me the willies, and I just sort of think, oh my God, that's it right there. That's the whole thing right there. And the whole Marianne, right? And then I'll come on something, I'll find something else and go, oh my God, that's it. And it's the same thing, right? Well, this is one of those moments, these, okay, the whole Marianne moments. Think about this now. The Kybalion states that the positive pole dominates over the negative pole, and it's technically of a higher degree. In other words, life bends toward the positive, toward truth, and toward love. So when you think all is lost, it isn't. It's only a matter of degree, and all you have to do is move to a better place and see it manifest there. Influencing another's mental state is possible by bringing your own vibration up to the desired frequency, and then via the principle of, or the process of induction, focus that vibration on another person, thus affecting that individual's mental state. Again, energy vampires do this all the time, but what if instead of focusing vampiric energy on someone, you focused love on someone? When a witch does a love spell, magician does a love spell, when you're trying to bring harmony to a situation, when you're trying to balance something out, all we're really doing there is using the process of induction to affect someone else's mental state. We know that this can happen, again, using my example from earlier of when you walk into a room and someone's angry or someone's upset. Say you're coming into a room and someone has just received some terrible news and they're crying. Or maybe they haven't started crying yet, but you can just tell something's wrong, you know. So to think that we can't then take that energy and that with focused intention and try to influence someone else. You can do it within the trance state. You can do it just within, a magical working. But if you go within a trance state, and we're going to talk about that as well, if you go within a trance state and you do a little hedge riding or a little shamanic journeying or what have you, you can achieve that higher level frequency. From that standpoint, then you can then set the intention to maybe bring balance to a certain situation. Maybe you're having a difficulty with somebody else and you're having to, you've not found any resolution. And so the only place you can do that is within the trance state, and try to influence them to at least lay down the arms, to drop the resistance, and just to allow for love to replace all of it. Remember, the positive pole dominates over the negative, and life bends toward love and toward truth. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. You're not disrespecting free will. You're not doing anything when you do that. But I just thought that was amazing. They call it induction. I just call it, influencing. So we talked about the principle of polarity, and now we're up to the chapter 11. So we're moving on here, and I think we're going to be able to do this whole thing in one fell swoop. We won't have to do a third video. But the chapter 11 is about rhythm. And remember, we talked about that. Polarity sets the boundaries, and then you have the motion in between, because everything vibrates, so everything's going to keep moving. But with a structure, you're only going to go so far, right? Now, one thing you need to know, unless you're somebody that maybe is bipolar or something like that, where you have trouble managing those swings, that rhythm that you live in, you might be somebody that goes from one extreme to the other. But it doesn't happen very often. Typically, even within a bipolar structure, your swing's only going to be in one section. And then maybe you'll be over here on the manic side, and you'll kind of be here. And then you'll go back over to the depressive side, and maybe you'll be here. Or maybe you just simply manifest as agitated depression, and that's how you do it. Your mania is contained within the agitation. But you see, the swing is not quite as wide as you might think, although it can happen. My degree's in psychology. I spent a year working at a mental hospital after I graduated. And I'm telling you, there are bipolar people, they come into the hospital and they're so out of control. They're off their meds, they're so out of control, and they literally, I don't know how they're not reaching one extreme to the other. And as high as they get, when they crash, they really crash. It's awful. So, anyway, about rhythm, we're talking action and reaction, advance and retreat, creation and destruction, outpouring, indrawing. Outpouring is the breathing out of the universe, the outpouring of the Great Mother's breath. The indrawing is pulling us back to her. Outbreathing, inbreathing of Brahm, as the Hindu people say. The universe is created at its grossest point of matter. Again, we talked about this earlier. When you polarize negatively, and you have to swing all the way back and begin your upward swing spiritward, it's the same sort of thing in creation. We begin at the grossest point of matter and begin that upward swing back to source from there. Essentially, we're born, we live, we die, and we do it all over again. Apparently, all at the same time. You think of this as layers instead of individual events. Again, if you have your one life, you have all of this stuff happening in between, right? You've got the polarity of all the different things and we're swinging back and forth. Well, if you think of it in terms of individual lifetimes, that describes it one way. But if you think of all the lifetimes happening together, maybe you think of life as one big onion. So basically, we're talking in terms of the principle of rhythm, we're talking about the pendulum swinging eternally. And this is not only a physical and material vibration, but rhythm occurs on the mental plane as well. And this is, I mean, you can see this played out in a biorhythm chart. If you look at that, I mean, obviously it's going to include some other things, but if you just look at the emotion or intuition or what have you, I mean, you'll see physicality. And basically, you're looking at waves that do this, right? Sine waves. We go up, we go down, we go up, we go down. And that's describing the principle of rhythm, is it not? But from there, we're also talking about two general planes of consciousness, lower and higher. And each one, again, has its own swing. Sort of like I talked about in terms of bipolar disorder, where you might have one swing associated with the manic side of self, and then the depressive side of self, you might have a different type of swing. Well, the same sort of thing is true, again, as above, so below, as within, so without. You're talking about higher self having its own set of laws on a higher plane that it deals with, and then the lower self having the same. If you raise, and we talked about this earlier, in terms of transmutation and also in terms of the law of neutralization, if you raise the ego above the vibrations of the lower plane, then the law of neutralization takes effect. So if you, again, focus on something lofty when you're really in an irritated mood, by virtue of the law of neutralization, you neutralize those negative attitudes and feelings and experiences and then transmute them into something better. And when you do that, by virtue of doing that, you're moving out of that lower plane and into a higher. And so it's like rising above something and not letting it affect you. It's that same sort of thing, but that's actually done energetically. If you look at the lower plane as the subconscious level, an unconscious or not particularly aware of spirit, we'll just call it that. We don't want to say you're not aware at all that spirit exists, but yet you're not particularly conscious of it. So whatever nonsense is going on there, if you move that into if you move your consciousness into a higher level of that, then you're no longer affected by whatever swing is going on there in the lower energies. And so you're not really, in other words, now your conscious level has shifted into spirit awareness. And so you're not really affected by, whatever you were upset about before or whatever conflict was going on before. Somehow it's just not, you've risen above it. That expression, let's just rise above it, weather it, rise above it, get above it, get above it so you can see it more clearly. Step back from it so you can see it more clearly. Same sort of thing, right? I mean, basically, it's just about not letting negative moods affect us. The minute you start to feel it, just change your view to something more lofty and more happy, and go watch something Will Ferrell does. I mean, you'll laugh yourself silly. I mean, do something like that. Just get yourself out of it immediately. Don't allow that to happen, in other words. Stay in the consciousness area. If you start, and that's the other trick you might try, if you start thinking about consciousness being that of spirit and unconsciousness or subconsciousness or semi-consciousness being that of ego, then you realize that's just a really ineffective way to function, right? Because you don't have all the facts, you don't have all the information. The idea is to remain in control and to know that that's possible instead of letting our moods control us. There's also another thing contained within the whole rhythm issue. It's called the law of compensation. It happens when one swing determines the swing of another as a counterbalance. You're basically creating a balance and a counterbalance. And I know that we've all done that, haven't we? Provided a counterbalance for something. And here's the other thing. Those of us that feel things really deeply, we're going to feel things deeply on both ends of the swing, right? So if we're happy, we're really happy. If we're sad, we're really sad. And I know about this because I'm that person, okay? I have people that will, I had this one lady, I've known her since college, and I've never been particularly comfortable around her. Her energy seems suspicious. She's always on the verge of judging someone else harshly, making these little underlying digs. And it's like I would look at her and I'd be like, do I talk to her? Do I engage much? I was talking to someone else, right? And I was at another college. Actually, I was taking some classes and she walked by, right? But she's taken some classes too. Different college, years and years apart, right? Probably, oh golly. Well, the first time when I knew her, it was in the 70s. That's when we met. So this would have been in the 90s. So, some 15 years or so have passed, maybe, or better. I graduated from the first place and I was just taking some more classes, right? And so she walks by, but I'm talking to somebody from my class, right? And I must have been having just a really animated conversation because she has to come back later and says, well, I was going to talk to you, but you were having such an animated conversation. I just didn't know if I should interrupt. And she said it just like that. I'm like, what? So some of us are just really expressive. We feel things so deeply, and that's just how it is. And so if you come across someone like me, just, avoid the judgments because it's like, because we all just kind of sit, I've known other people that do this, and it's like, we just kind of sit there going, what did I do wrong? Anyway, all you have to know about the law of compensation is that it creates balance. Also, another thing that we need to be aware of, and I found this is one of those, the whole Marianne moments. Pain precedes pleasure, but it may be coming from a past life experience because the pleasure side is an invoked response or swing from the negative. Think about that. The chain of lives is continuous, part of the one life of the individual, and each swing may take several lifetimes to transition. So some of the pain that in other words, we talk about, if you look at your astrological chart, you look at where Chiron is and what it says. Basically, the Chiron is the wounded healer. Now, we're not to be, governed by all of this. It's just to inform us that, hey, we had some issues before. Usually we think of those issues as being woundings from childhood, but we need to start thinking more broadly than that. Because sometimes we look at our childhood, and I had a very difficult childhood, lots of abuse, all kinds of things, right? So, and I've talked about that on the blog. I've actually talked about it on during the videos and all of that. I'm a survivor. And so we can look at, and I could sit and I could say, well, my Chiron could be talking about issues there, but I don't think so. It feels bigger than that. I mean, don't the issues with Chiron, don't they feel bigger than that? So you have to consider the possibility that this swing toward positivity that you're having now is a response to negativity that took place in past lifetimes, that it could have something to do with your early childhood. But if it feels bigger, you got to, I don't know, go look at your ancestry, go do that, figure out where you come from. I, unfortunately, or fortunately, I come from who originated us, okay? I'm in the Merovingian, I'm in the royalty, I'm in all that stuff, right? And all of them are related to those who created us. And so when you start to look at, in other words, through the witch trials, if you look at the North Berwick witch trials in Scotland, King James the sixth of Scotland / first of England. His mother was Mary Queen of Scots. He's a cousin in my ancestry. He wrote Demonology. He's the one that started the North Berwick witch trials, but it was in response to another cousin, Francis, the 5th Earl of Bothwell, who decided to start all this nonsense, this witch craze, and and this was all because he didn't get to be king. He wanted to be the king, and James got it. So all this got crazy, right? And they're starting, and whoever the witches were, Agnes Sampson might have been one, might have been a witch. But the rest of them likely, hung back and they were hidden. So, whether any of them died or not, but there's several that I'm related to that were killed during this time. And you have this, so you start to see how these traumatic experiences that happen in your ancestry might carry forward. And so if you look at where you come from, in my case, my family was on all sides of the equation. They were the ones doing the killing, the murdering, the drawing and the quartering, the flailing. All of the things that happened to people were caused by my people. And also, my people were the ones that were the recipients of them. So I'm on all sides, right? So you start to really think, and I had no idea this growing up, mind you. I only found this out, I don't know, whenever I started doing my ancestry, maybe 10, 11, 12 years ago or something. That's when I went there looking for witches, and I found the mother lode. Not where I thought I'd find them on my maternal side, but on my paternal side. And that's where it all is. I'm related to the guy that is what is he? The Wizard of Yester Hall, Yester Castle, Yester Castle. And he's the one that commanded the Goblin army to create the basement in this castle. It's called the Goblin Hall, basically. It's a kind of a bowl-shaped type of a basement. I don't know. He commanded them. They built all this, right? So you start to look for when I saw this section in chapter 11 about pain preceding pleasure, it's like, okay. When you start to look at that in terms of the spiritual swing that we take, when we begin to polarize positively, you see, where did it begin? And so all that they're saying is that don't just consider this from this current lifetime, right? Well, we're only at 52 minutes, so I'm just going to keep going. We're just going to do 2 of these, and we won't have a third. So now we're up to chapter 12, and we're talking about causation. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized, and I love that. Another Marianne moment, yeah. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. So nothing happens by chance. All happens according to law. And especially when we talk about the stone falling down from the mountain and crashing through the guy's roof, some of those causes are obscure, and I would venture to guess most of them are. Nothing ever causes anything else. Cause and effect deal with the events that arise from a precipitating cause. Something causes something else to happen. Think a chain of events. Ancestry, like I just talked about, is an example. So I wrote that down, and that doesn't really make sense. Nothing ever causes anything else. That's actually not written very well, is it? Because that doesn't actually describe this. That was just a note that I put down. Actually, something causes everything. Things don't arise out of nothing. Let's put it that way. That makes more sense. Okay. Free will and determinism aren't exactly what happens here. Mostly we're responding to our environment believing we have free will, but do we? Do we really? Now, if you think in terms of reality being just in this circle, okay? Everything happens. We call that the mind of the all right? Everything is contained within the mind of the all as we rest in the great mother's breath, right? So, if everything is there for us, in a sense, it's just stuff for us to choose and to put together in our own way, right? So if everything is there, the only free will is in what we're choosing, or are we? Are we really choosing? Is part of the cause and effect the choice that we make before incarnating? Is that the cause? The soul agreements we make, does it then manifest the effect? So are we simply living are we living within the effect of the overall choice that we made? I don't know. Let's see. Unless we learn to rise above moods, emotions, etc., and operate in a higher plane of perception, free will isn't really expressed, is it? The goal is to be the creator of the game instead of its pawn, still governed by cosmic law, of course, just on a higher plane of existence, where we have the ability to determine our own fate, to determine our own moods, to determine our own reality, our own outcome. Because we've learned how to successfully transmute the lower energies of the lower self into the higher self, into that higher plane of existence. Now, chapter 13, again, we're going to talk about gender here. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on planes. That's the quote. So, gender and sex are not the same. Sex is a manifestation of gender on the greater physical plane. From the Latin, gender means to beget, to procreate, to generate, to create, to produce, to regenerate. Now, I know nothing about electricity, but I have to talk about electrons and things because it was in the text. I was going to ask my husband, but I didn't. Anyway, electrons are positively charged. They're considered masculine. Negatively charged, they're considered feminine. Positive, receptive, but not a judgment, okay? Positive and negative combine together to create something new. The positive or masculine energy directs its energy toward the negative or feminine that then does all the work of creation, because isn't that what women do, right? Each pole, though, is dependent upon the other. Again, contained within the same circle, right? Now, chapter 14, we're gonna still talk about gender, but it's mental gender, all right? So we aren't just masculine and feminine, all right? We aren't just men and women, although we can contain both. We contain both of those principles within each one of us, irrespective of whether we're a man or a woman. But when we talk about mental gender, we're talking about conscious versus subconscious mind, subjective versus objective, passive versus active, right? The dual mind is then considered an expression then of mental gender. Masculine corresponds with the objective mind, conscious mind, voluntary mind, active mind. Corresponds with the elements air and fire. Whereas the feminine principle corresponds to the subjective mind, subconscious mind, involuntary mind, passive mind, and elementally we're looking at earth and we're looking at water. So practical side of self and emotions versus will and intellect. The I versus the me. Me reflects what we experience is real about ourselves, body, physicality, etc. Self is the body, basically. But the I is the higher self, understands that the body is separate from the self, a vehicle only. Think of this instead of the I. Think of this as the I am. All right, the I am. Me is the lower self. I am is spirit. Because I am manifests us into form, does it not? It does. All can be changed or transmuted from the I or higher self standpoint. And that's what I'm talking about transmuting the lower self energies, the ego energies, the me energies into the I am energies from the standpoint of the I am. The I has the power to direct the me through the expression of will. Feminine principle receives impressions. Masculine expresses that impression. So you get the orders from the man or the masculine presence, and the feminine presence carries it out. I know. That's funky, isn't it? But it's just energy. Don't think of it as men and women. Feminine principle receives, I already said that, feminine generates new thought, while masculine concerns itself with the expressions of will and stimulation. The I stands as observer to the actions of the me, or the I am stands as observer to the actions of the egoic me. Now, in telepathy, masculine principle is projected toward the feminine principle. And in that, principle allows the idea to grow and develop in the mind of the other person. So when you're trying to influence, you would invoke you would invoke will and cast that intention of will in terms of an idea or whatever to grow within the feminine side of self, the feminine principle, or the feminine in someone else, okay? And allow to assist them in allowing that, in other words, to plant the seed, if you will, for an idea to grow and develop in the mind of someone else. So again, if you're trying to say, going back to the example of if you're having an issue with someone and a relationship has proved challenging and you can't seem to get through it, you could go into trance state, get into, at least theta, relax yourself into theta, go through alpha, go into theta. Delta, you can do it there, but theta is a little bit more active, and so you can, and delta is really deep, all right? But theta, you can go into the theta frequency range, and you can then, focus your intention to create love in that person. Watch them physically, emotionally, energetically rise to the level of love and out of the morass of judgment, right? And you can do it from that standpoint. But most people, we live in the me aspect of self and we don't realize how much control we really have. And how many of us are programmed this way through the expression of the masculine force upon the feminine principle within. Think patriarchy, because that's what we're having right now. The masculine force, the patriarchal force, is not in balance. And it does not recognize the feminine principle other than that it's that which to control. So, last chapter. Yay! We're only a little over an hour. That's not too bad. No reason, I don't think, to separate this into two. I think we're fine here. The Hermetic Axioms is chapter 15. We're just going to basically recap here. That are just some basic quotes here and what this all means. It sort of governs all of this, brings it all together. To change your mood or mental state, change your vibration. Remember, will directs intention, and attention changes vibration. So simply change your attention, and you will change your mood. You will change everything about you. Change your focus. Look somewhere else. Look away, look away. Next one, to destroy an undesirable rate of mental vibration, put into operation the principle of polarity and concentrate upon the opposite pole to that which you desire to suppress. In other words, kill out the undesirable by changing its polarity. Again, transmitting lower frequency into higher by focusing on the higher frequency. Killing off the energy to the other. That's all focus is. If you focus somewhere else, you kill off the energy to the other thing. You dissolve those, and then if you go and you mentally dissolve the channels you've created to that, give it no more attention. It'll just do it on its own. Mind, as well as metals and elements, may be transmuted from state to state, degree to degree, condition to condition, pole to pole, vibration to vibration. So to master true polarization, you got to master mental transmutation or mental alchemy, because we can have no effect on the environment surrounding us without changing our own polarity. So if we are polarizing negative, we can have no effect on our environment until we polarize positively. Now, I will suggest to you also that just because we may have chosen service to self before coming in here doesn't mean that we can't polarize that a different way. In fact, I would say that people choosing that have likely chosen that to go all the way back to then swing positively. All right, and it may take them several lifetimes to do it, They may not, and rumor has it, according to the Ra group, folks like that are probably not going to go on to the fifth dimension with the rest of us. We're going to sort of transition over the fourth. Again, it's that middle ethereal substance area anyway. They're probably going to go there, but they won't come back into play until sixth density. So they're going to need several times here to figure things out and to make that trek back in terms of the positive swing. Rhythm may be neutralized by an application of the art of polarization. Our moods, feelings, emotions are due to the to and fro swing we experience. Again, go look at a biorhythm chart, you'll see it. If we rise mentally to a higher level awareness, we avoid the backward swing into the lower self, bringing the lower self into higher resonance to experience that higher self swing instead of the one that takes so long to get back. Bring it up here. So, I guess that's it. Not too bad. I'm going to upload these together, and I'm going to put part 1 and part 2 on it, so you'll know. But anyway, I love this text. If you've not read it, download it. Again, it's... I think, at least in terms of witchcraft, it really helps you understand what it is you're doing. It helps you understand when you're trying to transmute one thing to another, what the process is and where you need to do it from. I think that all too often we think that, and I think that we do this when we go see therapists, and it's not, and I have a degree in psychology, so I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's not that you don't want to go and seek therapy if you need it. If you go talk things out. The problem is that you're really talking about it from the lower standpoint, aren't you? It's like you're swimming around in that instead of moving to something else, you know? So maybe instead of therapy, maybe you want to take a walk in nature and just get outside the whole issue to begin with, you know, completely. Raise your vibration and frequency and see if it doesn't change the situation for you, or at least your perception of it. You might not be able to change what's going on, but surely you can change your perception of it. And I think that that's what the Kybalion, if you don't get anything else out of this, that's really what you should know. And we don't, but the main thing is we don't want to change it from the lower vibration. If you think of, and I don't know that it's fair to do this, but if you think about it in terms of the lower vibration being, you know, negative and hostile, and the higher vibration being loving and productive and all of that, then you can see that lower energies cannot be transmuted from their standpoint. You have to do it from that other perspective. Otherwise, how do you gain that perspective, you see? So, in any event, that was cool. I hope you liked it. I'm going to do some more of these. I don't know what I'm going to do next. Maybe I'll do the stanzas of Daisen, the 7 stanzas. You know, they're so long, though, I'm really going to have to streamline them. But they're very cool, too. Anyway, maybe I'll do something next on elements. Maybe I'll do that, elemental energies, and maybe we'll do that. I don't know. I'm just going to think about it. This was fun, though, and I hope you enjoyed it. In any event, I guess that's it. Be good to yourself. Be good to one another. Blessed be.